We're going to talk about Chapter 1, the human body, an orientation. I'm going to switch to the PowerPoint presentation now, and this should be about 10 or 15 minutes. Okay, let's get started here. And we're looking at human body, orientation, and what we're doing is learning basically some terminology, a few things like that. Basic terminology, anatomy is the study of structure and shape of the body, whereas physiology is the study of how a body and its parts work. So we've got form and function. And one thing to be aware of is that form always follows function. Things are shaped the way they are and made the way they are because of what they do. So physiology is an integrated part in the study of anatomy. Because our organs are shaped the way they are because of what they do. Now, there are lots of different levels of study. We've got gross anatomy, which deals with large structures, easily observable. So here we have an image of some things about gross anatomy. We've got some internal structures that are also considered part of the gross anatomy. So different glands, different things like that, but facial structures, etc. And then we have microscopic anatomy, which is stuff that cannot be seen with the naked eye. Basically, we can only see these structures with a microscope. So we are looking at the smaller structures in different organs. This is an example of looking at some of the cells that make up the gastric pits that line the stomach. Now, overall, we have multiple layers of organization. The most simplest one comes down to chemical level. We have atoms that combine to form molecules, but a hydrogen atom is the smallest you can get and still have something that has its own particular distinct properties. Once we start combining things, we get molecules. So we have molecules of water, we have carbohydrates, proteins, things like that. And all of those things go into making cells. Now, cells are the smallest component of living beings. Now, a group of cells, all of the same basic type, are tissues. And if you combine several tissues together to form a structure, you're looking at an organ. Let's go to the next part. The next level is the organ system level. And so organ systems consists of several organs that work together. So if I were to look at the exhaust system of a car, okay, well, the muffler would be one organ, the tailpipe would be another organ, the exhaust manifold would be another organ, and so on and so forth. So you can kind of get a little bit of an analogy there. Now, the whole car does not exist just of the exhaust system. So we have several different organ systems that go together that make the organism. And an organism, I should say these organ systems do overlap. For instance, when we eat, we absorb nutrients in the stomach and the intestinal tract. Those nutrients are transported into the blood where they get processed by the liver, and then they can be distributed to the different cells. Let's take a look at each of these levels. We have molecules, which come from atoms. We have an example of a cell is smooth muscle. Cells are made up of a variety of molecules. We have tissues, and in this case, it is a smooth muscle tissue made of lots of smooth muscle cells. And then we can have an organ, such as a blood vessel, which is made up of multiple types of tissues. So epithelial tissue is one type. We have muscle, that is another type. We have connective tissue, which is a third. And that's one key thing about an organ. It is made up of multiple tissues. Organ systems consist of different groups of organs that work together to do a specific thing. So the cardiovascular system that we're looking at here, its job is to distribute blood. And, that is the heart that pumps it, the vessels that carry it, the capillaries that exchange gases, etc., etc. And then again, the organism, which is us with all systems put together. Yeah, organ system overview. We've got lots of organ systems. I'm going to talk just a little bit about each. We have the integumentary system. That's the skin. It covers the body. It regulates temperature. It has receptors for pain, hot, cold. So protects deeper tissues from injury. And there's your basic skin covering. It also does some other things like make vitamin D, cools the body, etc. The skeletal system, which protects and supports the body. We make blood cells there. It stores minerals there, and it allows for movement in that muscles attached to it. And so we see the skeletal system, and as we said, multiple tissues. So the skeletal system is not just bone, it is also cartilage. It is dense, regular connective tissue, etc. Muscular system allows us to move. It helps maintain posture. And something that's often overlooked is it produces heat. About 60% of the energy that our body generates from muscular activity is actually heat. And that allows us to maintain a certain body temperature. Now, we go to image here, various muscles. There's 600 some odd plus muscles in the body. Later on in this course, we will talk about, about 30 of them. Nervous system is part of our control systems. We have two. We have the nervous system, and we also have the endocrine system. And the endocrine system is slow acting, but the nervous system is fast acting. Responds to internal and external changes, so changes in temperature, changes in activity levels. So it can activate muscles. It also activates glands. So for us to have long-term actions happen, our glands are actually activated by our nervous system. And here's basically what it contains. It's got the brain, various receptors, it's got the spinal cord, and then it's got nerves that branch out. So the brain and the spinal cord are your central nervous system, and the rest of it is your peripheral nervous system. We have the endocrine system, which secretes actually a lot of hormones. We have the pituitary gland, which secretes 8, and it secretes regulating hormones that can control growth, reproduction, metabolic rate, energy level, etc. So these are just some of the glands that we'll talk about when we get into the endocrine system. Now, cardiovascular system transports material via blood pumped by the heart. The blood contains a number of things, actually. Everything that's in every cell of your body was transported through blood. So oxygen, very important for every cell, but also waste products like carbon dioxide. We get nutrients to our cells and other waste products taken out of our cells as transported by the cardiovascular system. So now, lymphatic system. Lymphatic system is kind of does two activities. As our cardiovascular system leaks fluid out into our tissues. If you've ever heard someone referred to as puffy or having edema, it is that fluid that is leaked out of vessels that has not yet been taken up by the lymphatic system. The job of the lymphatic system is to take that fluid back out of the tissues that hasn't been picked back up by the cardiovascular system, and it carries it to lymph nodes which cleans the blood and activates our immune system if something weird is found. Now we've got a variety of nodes here. We've got numerous organs. And again, we'll talk about those more specifically when we get into that system. Respiratory system keeps blood supplied with oxygen, also removes the carbon dioxide. It also can function a little bit in acid-base balance, but that's not its primary job. So you can see again, nasal cavities, lungs, all of the pathways that carry the material to the lungs. And I always like to say, to err is human. The digestive system, one of my favorite systems, certainly. It allows us to break down food. It allows for us to absorb nutrients from that food and get that into the blood and go to the various organs. And then the parts that we are unable to digest and absorb, it eliminates through fecal matter. The urinary system, and the urinary system does a lot. It maintains the water level. And in fact, the amount of water that's in our body has more to do with how much we pee than how much we drink. It controls electrolytes. So if you've got too much salt in your diet, you're going to be peeing out more salt. It maintains acid-base balance. And we've got a very narrow range of pH that our bodies can live in. This allows us to get rid of excess acids, so our urine tends to be a little bit acidic, but it also lets us get rid of excess bases. And people who are vegetarians actually can have a basic kind of urine. And then it eliminates nitrogenous waste, and these are things that come from the breakdown of proteins. You can see that system. Although it's relatively small, it consists of the kidneys, the urethra, urinary bladder, ureters. It is a very important system for the functioning of our bodies. And the reproductive system. I honestly don't spend a whole lot on the reproductive system in this course, just because the reproductive system is one that we can actually live without. It is, at least individually, it's not necessary for me as an individual to have a child. For the species, it is critical. But it allows us to make offspring. We have testes, which make sperm and male hormones, and we have ovaries, which produce eggs and female hormones, and various structures that allow those two things to get together. Hopefully, you'll find that beneficial. That should cover the first presentation, and that's it for me.